One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
UMBC Athletic Director Tim Hall is on One Question today. We've got a trio of questions that I want to bounce off of Tim, and inevitably, as these things go, he's bound to say something that will require or pique my interest in asking a follow-up. And Tim, I want to start with your president, Freeman Hrabowski. For those of us who follow higher ed and many people who will listen to this podcast and read D1 Ticker certainly are taking a look at the broader industry and the broader marketplace. And Freeman is out there constantly. He's an expert in many fields, highly regarded as a university academician, but also a leader. Been at UMBC for a long time. So I am curious, what are some keys you've learned both working with Freeman, but also working for a president who is as visible and has such a large national profile as he does? How has that impacted you, and what have you learned?
Sure. Well, first I'll answer by further endorsing what you mentioned about Freeman. I've had the pleasure of working in intercollegiate athletics for a little over 23 years, and I can tell you I've worked with a number of fantastic leaders, however, none that are as comprehensively impressive as Freeman. And, you look at the fact that he has been here sitting in the leadership chair for 20-plus years, which is a long time to be the CEO of any entity, regardless of the industry. He's taken UMBC, which is only 50 years old, and made us what many times we are referred to as a public Ivy League institution with very high entrance standards. From an athletic perspective, we have no exceptions committee, so student athletes coming in here have to be strong academically and athletically. He is known as one of the top leaders and educators, not only in the country, but specifically for STEM education, and has put this institution on a trajectory to compete with, again, the Ivy Leagues and the Stanfords and the large land grant institutions that are heavy in STEM, but comprehensively as well. If you look at Freeman's background in terms of commissions that he has chaired for former President Obama, to the number of high-level academic institutions that have sought him out to be their leader, but he has stayed here because he believes in what he's building. He's not finished with what his vision is for UMBC as an institution. And, many times we look to the media in periodicals for reinforcement, and certainly there are some legitimate media and some that are not, but a number of years ago, Time magazine named Freeman as one of the top leaders, period, in any industry. And so you look at a periodical like Time magazine and its viewership and the type of cutting edge work that it does from a reporting perspective, and that's pretty high praise to have a magazine like Time magazine name you as one of the top leaders, not only really in America, but more broadly than that. So what I've learned working with Freeman is I think a lot of it is rooted in his background and where he's come from as a scientist and a mathematician, and talking about resources. And so if you don't have the money, you need to work towards acquiring that money. And so the notion of a multi-year process. And so as we look to make our programs here stronger, that's why we've given coaches 7-year contracts, because we want our programs to be successful. And we know that some of our programs are in more of a fledgling state than others. And so needing that multi-year process to be able to build some synergies and some strong levels of commitment to make those programs successful. Obviously, as a STEM institution, Freeman talks a lot about data and outcomes. And what outcome do you want? And what data are you going to use and assess to plan your work to ultimately get the outcome that you want? And then certainly what I enjoy talking to Freeman a lot about is his history and background. He, as many people know, marched with Dr. Martin Luther King as a young boy in Birmingham, Alabama. And so, as we always talk in athletics about being held to a higher standard and the notion of standing for something or you'll stand for anything, Freeman is a very highly principled individual, and certainly a lot of integrity. And so, reinforcing the notion of, those of us that are in higher education, whether it's faculty or staff or administrators or certainly within intercollegiate athletics, we are held to a higher standard. And having the opportunity to serve young people at an institution like UMBC is a privilege that we have. It's not a right. And then finally, what I can say about, Freeman is, obviously he is, while he is world-renowned in terms of, his ability to affect positive change, he's a very humble person. And we talk all the time about, humility and having a sense of humor. And I think it's his personality. He takes what he does real serious, but he doesn't take himself very serious. And so that friendly, warm personality from an athletics perspective has allowed my working with him and my involvement with him to open some doors to allow people into the UMBC athletics community that might not have been opened without Freeman's relationships.
Given his profile, Tim, are there best practices that you've kind of implemented from a communication standpoint? He's across the country speaking regularly. How do you guys communicate, and how can that relate to maybe any AD and chancellor or president relationship on how to do that effectively at distance at times?
Sure. Freeman does travel quite a bit. And, it's something that's helped not only certainly our institution in the state of Maryland because of the success that we've had in many facets of our educational enterprise, but it's helping other institutions as he goes out and talks about the successes that we've had. And so one of the things that I love about UMBC, it's a very relational place. And I think a lot of that is rooted in the fact that we are only 50 years old. And many of the individuals that are in senior level positions here started here in lower or mid-management and then progressed throughout our short history and tenure. And so because Freeman does travel, there are individuals that, back on campus that I interact with, the Vice President for Student Affairs, a Chief of Staff, our Vice President for OIA, and we all really work in a team approach, but Freeman is always available from an email perspective, from a text, and let me know when a good time to call is, and I'll excuse myself if I need to and call you back. And so, I can't be more pleased with the amount of attention that we get, even if there's distance involved because of his rigorous travel schedule.
Do you adhere to President Broadhead at Duke's short texts are best? I don't know if you saw this, but he said Kevin White is a chronic texter, but he's a long texter. And it was a piece in the Duke student newspaper about their relationship. And obviously President Broadhead is on his way out. But I've always been surprised. I think those of us who are maybe over the age of 30, we say, oh, well, young people, they're always on their phone. They're always texting. I'm always surprised at how much real business gets done via text.
We do text. What I'll say is ours are for, hey, here's the situation. When can we find time to talk for context? And what I personally value about that, and so whether that's with our VP for Student Affairs or our VP for OIA, if we're talking about a prospective donor, or certainly with Freeman, is taking that time to be very strategic and judicious and having an economy of words when we're having that conversation, because he's cognizant of my busy schedule as I am of his, but sometimes context can get lost when it's all through text. And so, he is very giving of his time to a lot of entities, certainly one of which is athletics. And, it allows us to be able to move on some things when a quick text response is needed, but when I need 3 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes of your time, we carve that out and can be able to talk as well. And so, even when he's gone, I never really feel like he's gone, because our relationship is such that, I can text and he'll say, I'm, speaking in 15 minutes. Is it urgent, or can I call you in 2 hours? So it's worked well for us.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.